The alien general's confidence. The massive warship hung in the darkness of space like a silent predator. Around it, thousands of smaller ships moved in perfect formation, creating a fleet that seemed unstoppable. Inside the command center of the flagship, General HFY stood tall, his sharp, scaled armor reflecting the faint lights of the control panels. He gazed at the holographic map before him, which displayed the galaxy's sectors. His golden eyes focused on the small, insignificant human-controlled region. "Humans," he muttered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Fragile, foolish beings. They have no place in the galaxy. Today, we will remind them of their weakness." HFY's second-in-command, Commander Relic, stepped forward. His expression mirrored the confidence of his leader. "General, our fleet numbers 10,000 strong. Their defenses are scattered and weak. This will be a quick victory." HFY nodded. For years, his people had dominated the galaxy, crushing weaker civilizations and expanding their empire. Humans were no different. They had technology, yes, but nothing compared to the might of the Sci-Fi Empire. The Sci-Fi had been expanding for centuries, conquering and enslaving entire species. For HFY, humans were just another conquest in a long list. "Prepare the fleet for the final jump into their territory," HFY commanded, his voice calm but commanding. "We will strike their central colony first. It will send a clear message to the rest of their kind." "Yes, General," Relic replied, saluting. The crew of the flagship worked quickly, their movements precise and efficient. Lights flickered across the control panels as the fleet adjusted its course. HFY watched, his hands clasped behind his back, feeling the pride of commanding such a powerful force. As the fleet prepared to jump, an officer spoke from one of the stations. "General, we've detected a signal near the border of human space. It's a single ship." HFY raised an eyebrow. "A single ship? A scout, perhaps?" The officer hesitated. "No, General. It doesn't match any of their scout ships. It's larger, but not as large as one of our warships. The design is strange." HFY let out a low chuckle. "They send one ship to face us. How typical of humans. They think they can negotiate or stall for time. Pathetic." The room filled with quiet laughter from the crew. The idea of one ship standing against 10,000 was absurd. Commander Relic smirked. "Shall I order one of our squadrons to intercept it, General? It will be good practice for the pilots." "No," HFY said, shaking his head. "Let them come closer. I want to see what they're planning. Perhaps they think they can scare us with a desperate attempt at resistance." Minutes passed, and the human ship moved closer. It was small compared to the Scythar fleet, its black hull reflecting no light. The design was sleek, almost alien in appearance. The crew of the flagship began to murmur among themselves, confused by its lack of insignia or visible weaponry. "Strange," Relic muttered. "It's not firing. It's not retreating. It's just there." HFY frowned. His confidence remained, but a small spark of curiosity flickered in his mind. What were the humans trying to accomplish with this single vessel? "Open a channel," HFY ordered. "Let's hear what they have to say." The communications officer pressed a few buttons, and the bridge was filled with static for a moment before a calm, steady voice broke through. "This is Captain Elias of the human vessel Resolute. You are entering human space uninvited. Turn back now, or face the consequences." The room fell silent for a moment before bursting into laughter. HFY laughed the loudest, his deep voice echoing off the walls. "Consequences. From one ship. These humans have a sense of humor. I'll give them that." Relic grinned. "General, shall we destroy them now? Their arrogance is almost insulting." HFY raised a hand, silencing his subordinate. "Not yet. Let them come closer. Let them see the full might of the Scythar fleet before we crush them. I want them to understand the mistake they've made." The human ship continued its slow approach, undeterred by the size of the alien armada. The holographic map displayed its position, a tiny dot surrounded by a sea of Scythar ships. Strange readings, General, another officer reported. The ship's energy signature. It's unlike anything we've seen before. Zavar's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? It's powerful. More powerful than it should be for a ship of that size. The readings are fluctuating, almost as if. The officer paused, unsure of how to continue. Speak clearly, Zavar snapped. The officer swallowed nervously. It's almost as if the ship is hiding its true energy levels. Zavar leaned forward, his curiosity growing. Could the humans have developed new technology? Was this some kind of trap? No, he thought. Even if the ship was hiding something, it was still 1 against 10,000. Maintain our course, Zavar ordered. Let them make the first move. We will show them what true power looks like. The human ship stopped moving, hovering in place at the edge of the fleet's formation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a message came through again. This is your only warning. Leave now, or be destroyed. Zavar smirked. They're bluffing. Begin the attack. As the fleet moved to engage, a sudden flash of light erupted from the human ship. The flagship's sensors went wild, alarms blaring across the bridge. Zavar's confidence faltered for the first time as he stared at the display. What? What just happened? The officer's voice trembled. General, 30 of our ships. They're gone. Zavar's eyes widened in disbelief. The battle had just begun, but something told him this was no ordinary fight. The mysterious human ship. The destruction was immediate, total, and incomprehensible. 30 Scythar ships had vanished in the blink of an eye. The holographic display showed an empty void where an entire battle formation had once stood. On the flagship's bridge, the stunned silence was louder than any alarm. General Zavar gripped the edge of the command console, his claws digging into the polished surface. What weapon could do this? He demanded, his deep voice barely masking the tremor of shock beneath it. The sensor officer struggled to respond. General, there was no detectable projectile. No energy signature matching any known weaponry. It was instantaneous. Commander Relic broke the silence, his voice sharp with panic. We must retaliate now. That ship can't possibly fire again so soon. We'll overwhelm it before it. Silence. Zavar barked, cutting him off. His golden eyes were fixed on the human ship, now calmly hovering among the wreckage of its victims. It hadn't moved an inch since firing, as if it were an observer in its own battle. Relic, Zavar said slowly, his voice low and calculating. You think like a soldier. I think like a predator. That ship is no prey. It's hunting us. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence shaken. Zavar turned back to the hologram. Increase scans. I want every detail. Structure, energy source, heat signatures, everything. That ship is hiding its secrets, and I intend to uncover them. A new alert chimed, and the communications officer stiffened in their seat. General, the human ship is transmitting again. Put it through. The voice of Captain Elias returned, calm and unyielding. You've seen what we can do. This is your second warning. Retreat now, and no more lives will be lost. Zavar sneered at the audacity. Second warning. This human believes they can dictate terms to me. Open a channel. The officer hesitated before complying. Zavar stepped forward, his imposing figure illuminated by the flickering glow of the console. Captain Elias, he began, his voice tripping with contempt. Your little trick was impressive, but it changes nothing. You face the might of the Scythar Empire. Surrender your ship, and I may consider sparing you. There was a pause. Then Elias's voice returned, colder than before. Spare me? General Zavar, you misunderstand the situation. I am not here to bargain. I am here to decide if you live. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Zavar's claws tightened against the console. Arrogant fool. You dare. Before he could finish, the human ship moved. Its motion was swift and precise, cutting through the debris field like a blade through water. It was no longer idle. It was advancing. General, Relic shouted. The ship is on an intercept course. It's targeting the second wing. Prepare defenses. HFY roared. All ships, open fire. Do not let it close the distance. The HFY fleet responded immediately. Thousands of weapons activated in unison, lighting up the void with a dazzling array of lasers, plasma, and missiles. The human ship was bathed in the chaotic brilliance of the attack. And then, impossibly, it disappeared. Where did it go? HFY demanded, his voice laced with fury. The holographic display recalibrated, struggling to track the target. The human ship reappeared moments later, completely unscathed, as if mocking their efforts. General, the sensor officer whispered, his voice trembling. Our weapons, they're having no effect. The ship's hull, no, its entire structure. It's absorbing everything we throw at it. HFY clenched his fists, his mind racing. No shields. No damage. This wasn't technology. It was something else, something far beyond their understanding. Suddenly, another burst of light erupted from the human ship. This time, the display showed an entire squadron of Sci-Fi ships, dissolving into nothingness. The light was silent, cold, and final. No explosions, no wreckage, just erasure. They're erasing us, Relic said, his voice barely a whisper. HFY's mind whirled. This wasn't war. It was annihilation. His confidence, his strategy, everything he knew about combat meant nothing against this enemy. And still, the human ship advanced, gliding through the void like a phantom. General, the communications officer said, their voice shaking, we're receiving another transmission. Play it, HFY growled. The voice of Captain Elias came through once more, steady and unrelenting. You've now lost 50 ships. I will not repeat myself again. Retreat. HFY stared at the display, his pride battling against the reality unfolding before him. Could he retreat? The HFY Empire had never fled from a fight. To run would be to admit weakness, to invite questions about his leadership. But to stay. General, Relic said cautiously, breaking into his thoughts. Perhaps we should consider their terms. For now. HFY didn't respond immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the human ship, now an ominous shadow in the distance, still untouched, still invincible. The predator in him wanted to fight, to strike back with everything he had, but the survivor in him whispered a different truth. That Scyther had underestimated humans, and now they were paying the price. Pull the fleet back, HFY said at last, his voice heavy with reluctant authority. We need more data. This isn't over. As the retreat order went out, HFY made one last promise to himself. This human ship had humiliated him, but the next time they met, he would be ready. Or so he thought. Shock and panic. The retreat order was met with confusion and disbelief across the Scyther fleet. Generations of conquest had drilled one commandment into every soldier, that Scyther do not retreat. And yet, here they were, turning their backs on a single ship, a vessel that defied logic itself. On the flagship, General HFY paced the command center, his mind a whirlwind of fury and doubt. The human ship hadn't pursued the retreating wings. Instead, it lingered, almost as if watching, waiting. Its silence was louder than any threat. General, the fleet is scattering, Commander Relic said, his voice tense. Morale is collapsing. The crews are asking, how could this happen? HFY rounded on him, his golden eyes blazing. It happened because we underestimated them. These humans are not what we believed. That ship is no mere vessel. It's a weapon designed to dismantle us. The sensor officer interrupted, his voice shaking. General, we're detecting something new. The human ship is emitting a low-frequency pulse. It's spreading across the debris field. Analyze it. HFY snapped. The officer hesitated. It's not just a scan. The pulse is interacting with our wreckage, reconfiguring it. What do you mean, reconfiguring it? HFY demanded, leaning over the console. The holographic display zoomed in on the destroyed Sci-Fi ships. As the pulse spread, fragments of the debris began to move, converging in patterns that defied physics. Broken metal twisted and fused, forming intricate alien structures. The display struggled to keep up, the shapes shifting faster than the sensors could process. "It's using our ships against us," Relic whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. "Turning them into something." Sivar's claws raked across the console. "Enough. Order the remaining wings to reform. We'll crush that ship with sheer firepower." "General," the communications officer interrupted, her face pale. "We're receiving messages from the surviving crews. They're refusing to re-engage. They say the ship is cursed." Sivar slammed his fist against the console. "Superstition. I will not have my fleet paralyzed by fear." But even as he spoke, the truth was undeniable. The crew on the bridge avoided his gaze, their expressions shadowed with dread. The ship wasn't just a military threat, it was an existential one. It defied logic, rewrote rules, and shattered that Scythar's unshakable pride. Meanwhile, aboard the human ship Resolute, Captain Elias observed the chaos with a calm, detached expression. The bridge of the Resolute was quiet, its crew operating in focused silence. The ship's advanced AI processed trillions of calculations every second, anticipating every possible move that Sci-Fi could make. For the humans aboard, this wasn't just a battle, it was a test. "Status?" Elias asked, his voice cutting through the low hum of the ship's systems. A young officer glanced up from their station. "The Pulse has completed Phase 1, Captain. The debris field is now fully under our control." Elias nodded. "And their response?" "They're panicking," the officer replied with a faint smile. "Exactly as predicted." "Good," Elias said, his tone steady. "This is a message, not a massacre. We'll push them further, but only as far as necessary." Back on Sivar's flagship, panic began to spiral out of control. The holographic display now showed the reconfigured debris field moving as one, like a swarm of mechanical predators. It surged toward the Scythar fleet, twisting and morphing as it approached. "General," the sensor officer cried. "The debris. It's alive. It's surrounding our ships." Sivar's command instincts kicked in. "Fire at will. Destroy it before it closes the gap." The fleet obeyed, unleashing another storm of plasma and missiles. The weapons tore through the swarm, scattering fragments in all directions. For a moment, it seemed the attack had worked. Then the fragments began to move again, reassembling into new shapes, larger and more menacing than before. "It's adapting," Relic said, his voice hollow. "No matter what we do, it just keeps coming." Sivar gritted his teeth. This was no ordinary enemy. The human ship wasn't just advanced, it was alive in a way he couldn't understand. Every move he made only seemed to feed its strength. The communications officer spoke up, her voice trembling. "General, the human ship is transmitting again." Sivar didn't hesitate. "Play it." The voice of Captain Elias came through, calm and precise. "You are out of time, General. This is your last chance. Withdraw your fleet or be consumed." Sivar's claws dug into the console. The predator in him wanted to fight, to defy the humans' ultimatum. But the strategist in him saw the truth. They were outmatched, outsmarted, and out of options. "General," Relic said quietly, "we can't win this. We need to retreat and regroup, for the sake of the Empire." Sivar's pride warred with his survival instincts. For the first time in his career, he faced an enemy he couldn't conquer. Slowly, He gave the order he had sworn never to speak. All ships, retreat. The Sci-Fi fleet began to pull back, their formations breaking as they fled the advancing swarm. Sci-Fi watched the display, his jaw tight with suppressed rage. This wasn't over. He would find a way to defeat this human ship, no matter the cost. On the Resolute, Captain Elias watched the Sci-Fi retreat. "Stand down the pulse," he ordered. "Let them go." The crew complied, and the debris field returned to stillness. The Resolute remained motionless, a silent sentinel in the void. "Captain," the young officer asked, "why let them leave? We could have ended it here." Elias leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Because the galaxy needs to know what we can do. Let HFY spread the word. Fear is a weapon as powerful as any fleet." The officer nodded, though a faint unease lingered. The Resolute might have won this battle, but the war was far from over. The general's desperation. The Sci-Fi fleet was in full retreat, their once perfect formations now shattered. Panic rippled through the ranks, breaking the discipline that had once defined them. Even aboard the flagship, General HFY could feel the cracks forming. His officers moved stiffly, their eyes flickering between their tasks and the display of the human ship that refused to pursue, yet radiated power. HFY slammed his fist onto the console, silencing the whispers among his crew. "Pull yourselves together. This battle isn't over. It's only a temporary setback." Relic, his second in command, hesitated before stepping closer. "General, with respect, this isn't a battle. It's an execution. That ship, it's rewriting the rules of warfare." Savar turned on him, his golden eyes blazing. "Are you suggesting we surrender? The Sci-Fi Empire does not bow to primitives." Relic swallowed hard, his voice steady but cautious. "No, General. I'm saying we need a new approach. Their technology, it's beyond us, but we still outnumber them. If we regroup and attack with everything we have." "Everything." HFY interrupted, his tone biting. "Do you not understand? We've thrown everything at them, and they've torn it apart like paper. This isn't just technology, it's something else, something I can't explain." The room fell into a tense silence, the crew frozen between fear and uncertainty. HFY straightened, forcing his voice to steady. "We need information. If we don't understand our enemy, we cannot defeat them." Meanwhile, aboard the human ship Resolute, Captain Elias observed the Sci-Fi's retreat. "Captain," the tactical officer reported, "they're pulling back to Sector Vesh. Their formations are fragmented. Should we pursue?" Elias shook his head. "No, they'll regroup soon enough. And when they do, they'll be desperate. Desperation makes them predictable." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Scyther's retreat had been a victory, but Elias knew the battle wasn't won. This wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about reshaping the galaxy's balance of power. "Prepare the next phase," Elias ordered. "Deploy the shadow net." A holographic display lit up, showing a series of unmanned probes being launched into the void. Each one carried cloaking technology and advanced sensors, designed to monitor the Scyther fleet from a distance. Elias watched as the probes disappeared, blending seamlessly into the darkness. "Let them think they've escaped," Elias said. "We'll watch, learn, and strike again when they least expect it." Back aboard the Scyther flagship, Tevar's desperation began to take shape as a dangerous plan. The sensor officer spoke up, her voice trembling. "General, we've detected an unusual energy field surrounding the human ship. It's disrupting our scans." Sevar's eyes narrowed. Disrupting, or concealing? The officer hesitated. "Both, General. It's as if the ship is shielding something. Its power source, perhaps." Sevar leaned forward, his claws tapping against the console. "Its power source," he murmured. "That's the key. If we can identify it, we can destroy it." Relic frowned. "General, with respect, how do you propose we penetrate their defenses? Our weapons are ineffective, and our scans can't get through. HFY turned to the communications officer. Send a message to all surviving ships. I want every piece of data collected during the battle. Energy signatures, weapon trajectories, even debris scans. Everything. The officer nodded and began transmitting orders. HFY's voice hardened. And activate the Black Spire protocol. The crew froze. The Black Spire protocol was a forbidden contingency, a last resort tactic reserved for only the most dire situations. It involved the use of experimental drones, artificial intelligences designed to self-destruct while gathering information from within enemy lines. Their activation was a direct violation of intergalactic treaties. General, Relic said carefully, the Council would not approve if the Black Spire drones are discovered. The Council isn't here, HFY snapped. And if we don't find a way to stop that ship, there won't be a Council left to complain. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but no one objected. HFY's authority was absolute, and their survival depended on his command. The drones were launched, their sleek black forms disappearing into the void. Unlike standard scanners, these drones were designed to bypass energy fields and collect data from within. HFY watched the display, his claws tightening around the edge of the console. As the Black Spire drones approached the Resolute, Captain Elias was already aware of them. The ship's AI detected the drones the moment they left the HFY fleet. Captain, the tactical officer said, enemy probes inbound. Stealth class. They're attempting to penetrate our shields. Elias smiled faintly. Let them. Begin counter-infiltration. The Resolute's systems activated a series of countermeasures, allowing the drones to collect false data. What they believed to be scans of the ship's power source were, in fact, decoy signals designed to overload their systems. One by one, the drones malfunctioned, their circuits fried by the overwhelming data. But before they were destroyed, Elias allowed one to return to the HFY fleet, carrying a single encrypted message. Back on HFY's flagship, the surviving drone delivered its findings. The crew scrambled to analyze the data, their screens lighting up with complex readings. HFY leaned forward, his heart pounding. What does it say? The message appeared on the main display, written in perfect Cytherian script. You cannot outthink us. You cannot outrun us. You have one chance left. Leave our space. HFY's breath caught. The humans hadn't just detected the drones. They had turned them into messengers. This wasn't war. This was a game. And that HFY were losing. Relic turned to HFY, his voice shaking. General, what do we do? HFY's claws scraped against the console. For the first time in his career, he didn't have an answer. The turning point. HFY sat in the command chair of the flagship, his claws rhythmically tapping the armrest. The crew's eyes darted nervously between their stations and the general, their collective fear nearly palpable. The encrypted message from the human ship repeated in his mind. You cannot outthink us. You cannot outrun us. You have one chance left. Leave our space. The human ship wasn't just toying with them. It was systematically dismantling everything HFY believed about warfare. And yet, retreating now would be a mark of weakness his empire could not afford. Relic broke the heavy silence. General, the fleet is in position. If we concentrate our fire on their ship, we may still have a chance. HFY turned to his second-in-command, his golden eyes narrowing. No. Brute force has failed us twice. We must change our strategy. He rose from his chair and gestured to the holographic display. That ship has a weakness. Every weapon has a flaw. It's only a matter of finding it. If we cannot destroy it, we'll disable it. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The plan was bold, bordering on reckless. But HFY's authority was absolute, and they obeyed without question. Meanwhile, aboard the Resolute, Captain Elias studied the HFY fleet's movements. The enemy wasn't retreating as quickly as he'd expected. Instead, their ships were regrouping, forming a complex and unconventional formation. Elias leaned forward, his sharp eyes narrowing at the display. "They're preparing for something," he said quietly. "Agreed," the tactical officer replied. "It's not a standard attack pattern. They're trying to box us in." Elias smiled faintly. "Desperation makes them creative. Let's see what they've come up with." On Xavar's flagship, the plan was unfolding. "Deploy the phase nets," Xavar commanded. From the Sci-Fi ships, dozens of metallic orbs were launched into space. Each orb emitted an intricate web of energy strands designed to disrupt shielding systems and paralyze ships caught within. The nets moved slowly at first, drifting toward the Resolute like harmless debris. "The nets are in place," Relic reported. "The human ship is surrounded." Xavar smiled grimly. "Good. Now we collapse the trap." The phase nets activated simultaneously, their energy fields surging toward the Resolute. The crew on the flagship held their breath, watching as the web closed around the human vessel. "It's working," the sensor officer said, his voice filled with hope. "The ship's shields are fluctuating." Xavar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. "Prepare boarding parties. If we cannot destroy the ship, we'll take it." On the Resolute, alarms flared across the bridge. "Captain, they've deployed energy nets," the tactical officer reported. "They're trying to destabilize our shields." Elias nodded, his expression calm. "Expected. Is the cloak ready?" "Yes, sir," the officer confirmed. "But if we activate it now, they'll detect the power surge." "Let them detect it," Elias said. "We've already calculated their response." As the phase nets closed in, the Resolute's hull shimmered. In an instant, the ship disappeared from view, leaving the nets to collapse in on empty space. On Xavar's flagship, chaos erupted. "The ship is gone," the sensor officer cried. "It's vanished completely." Xavar's satisfaction turned to fury. "Impossible. It's still there. Find it." Relic's face went pale as a new alert sounded. "General, multiple energy signatures detected, surrounding us." The holographic display flickered, revealing dozens of ghostly outlines appearing around the Tythar fleet. Each one resembled the Resolute, its sleek, black hull radiating an ominous energy. "They've replicated their ship," Relic whispered. "We're surrounded." Xavar stared at the display, his mind racing. "No," he growled. "It's a trick. They're projecting decoys to confuse us. Focus on the original signal." The sensor officer worked frantically, but the decoys moved in perfect synchronization, their energy readings indistinguishable from the real Resolute. The Scythar fleet hesitated, their weapons trained on targets that could vanish in an instant. "General," Relic said cautiously, "we can't identify the original. If we fire, we risk wasting resources." Xavar's claws dug into the armrest of his chair. He refused to believe this was the end. The Scythar were conquerors, and he would not let a single ship break their legacy. "Fire on all targets," he commanded. "Overwhelm them with numbers." The Scythar fleet unleashed its full arsenal, filling the void with plasma bolts and missiles. The decoys flickered and disappeared under the onslaught, but with every destroyed projection, another took its place. The chaos was complete, the Scythar fleet expending resources at an unsustainable rate. And then the Resolute revealed itself. Emerging from the shadow of a destroyed decoy, the human ship moved with terrifying precision. It targeted the Sci-Fi flagship directly, its energy weapon charging to full power. On the flagship, Xavar felt the weight of the moment. He had miscalculated, and now the predator had become the prey. Elias's voice broke the silence aboard the Resolute. "Fire." A single concentrated beam shot from the Resolute, striking the Sci-Fi flagship's main engines. The ship shuddered violently, its systems failing as power drained away. The flagship was disabled but not destroyed. A deliberate choice. On Xavar's bridge, sparks flew as the lights dimmed. "We've lost propulsion and weapons," Relic reported, his voice heavy with defeat. "We're defenseless." Xivar's shoulders sagged as the weight of his failure pressed down on him. The humans had outthought, outmaneuvered, and overpowered him. And now they held the fate of his fleet in their hands. The display flickered as a transmission from the Resolute came through. Captain Elias's face appeared, calm and unreadable. "Your fleet is defeated, General. You have one option. Surrender and leave our space. Refuse, and the next shot will not spare your lives." Xivar's claws trembled, his pride warring with the reality before him. For the first time in his life, he uttered the word he had sworn never to speak. Retreat, a warning to the galaxy. The Scythar fleet limped away from the battlefield, a fractured shadow of its former glory. Fires burned aboard the crippled flagship as emergency systems struggled to stabilize life support. General Xivar sat in silence on the darkened bridge, his once mighty presence reduced to a husk of despair. Around him, the crew avoided his gaze. They worked with mechanical precision, but the defeat hung heavy in the air, an unspoken burden none dared address. That Scythar, the conquerors of countless worlds, had been humiliated by a single human ship. Commander Relic finally broke the silence. "General, the remaining fleet is moving to safe distance. We've lost over 70% of our ships, and morale is gone." Xivar didn't respond immediately. His golden eyes were fixed on the holographic display, which now showed the retreating Scythar ships dispersing like frightened prey. His pride screamed at him to turn back, to make a final stand, but his logic, what remained of it, knew the truth. They would not survive another confrontation. "We underestimated them," Xivar said at last, his voice hollow. "Humans are not prey. They never were." Relic hesitated. "General, what do we tell the Council? They will demand answers." Xivar's claws tapped rhythmically against the console. "We tell them the truth. The humans have become something else, something far more dangerous than we could have imagined. They are no longer just another species in the galaxy." He stood, his tall frame casting a long shadow in the dim light of the bridge. "They are predators." On the Resolute, Captain Elias watched the Scythar retreat with a calm satisfaction. "They're running," the tactical officer reported. "No signs of regrouping. The battle is over." Elias nodded, his expression unreadable. "Good. But this wasn't about destroying them. It was about sending a message." He turned to the communications officer. "Prepare a galactic broadcast. I want this recorded and sent to every major power in the galaxy." The officer hesitated. "Sir, are you sure? This will escalate things." Elias's gaze was steady. "They need to know what happens when they cross us." Minutes later, a transmission echoed across the galaxy. On the holoscreens of countless civilizations, a video appeared. It showed the Resolute, dark and foreboding, with the smoldering wreckage of the Scythar fleet in the background. Captain Elias stood at the center of the frame, his expression calm but authoritative. "This is Captain Elias of the United Terran Navy," he began, his voice firm but measured. "Today, the Scythar Empire entered human space with the intent to conquer. They brought with them a fleet of 10,000 warships." The screen shifted, showing footage of the Scythar ships being obliterated by the Resolute. The energy bursts were silent but devastating, each shot precise and overwhelming. Elias's voice continued. "They underestimated us. They believe humanity to be weak, divided, and insignificant. They were wrong." The footage ended, and Elias's face returned to the screen. His eyes seemed to pierce through the camera, a silent challenge to any who watched. "Let this serve as a warning. Humanity has no desire for conquest, but we will not tolerate aggression. Those who threaten us will face the same fate as the Scythar fleet. This is not a threat. It is a promise." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the galaxy to process the chilling message. On a distant Scythar Council world, The broadcast sparked chaos. The Scythar High Council convened in an emergency session, their grand chamber filled with heated arguments and hushed whispers. Councillor Malik, the eldest member, stood at the head of the table, his expression grave. "This cannot be true," one councillor hissed. "A single ship cannot destroy an entire fleet." "But we saw it," another councillor shouted. "The humans have developed weapons we can't comprehend. If we don't act now, they will destroy us." Malik raised a hand, silencing the room. "General Xavar's report is en route. Until we have the full picture, we will not act out of fear." "But fear is all we have left," a younger councillor protested. "The humans have exposed our weakness. If this spreads, the other species we've conquered will rise against us. They will see us as vulnerable." Malik's voice hardened. "Then we ensure they never have the chance. Dispatch emissaries to our allies. If the humans wish to fight, we will not stand alone." Back aboard the Resolute, Elias received a priority message from Earth. A holographic figure of Admiral Lorna Braddock appeared on the bridge. She was a seasoned leader, her face lined with the weight of decades of war. "Captain Elias," she said, her tone sharp, "your broadcast was bold." Elias inclined his head. "It was necessary, Admiral. The Scythar needed to understand the consequences of their actions. So does the galaxy." Braddock's gaze was piercing. "You've made humanity's strength clear, but you've also painted a target on us. The Scythar won't let this go, and neither will the other powers. The galaxy isn't ready for what we've become." Elias's expression didn't waver. "Then we'll make them ready. They've underestimated us for too long. That ends today." Braddock sighed. "Just be prepared, Captain. You've started something bigger than one battle. The galaxy won't take this lightly." Elias nodded. "I never expected them to." Far from both fleets, another alien species watched the transmission in silence. Their leader turned to an advisor, their glowing eyes unreadable. "The humans have revealed their strength. The question is, how do we respond?" The advisor hesitated. "Do we form an alliance?" The leader smiled faintly. "Perhaps, or perhaps we see how far this strength goes. Send a ship to test them." Humanity's hidden strength. The galaxy was ablaze with rumors. The transmission from the Resolute had spread far and wide, igniting both fear and curiosity. Across countless worlds, leaders debated their next move. Would they challenge humanity, or would they attempt to forge uneasy alliances? For the Scythar Empire, there was no choice. General Xavar's retreat had shaken their foundations, and their once unstoppable reputation was now in question. Xavar sat in his quarters aboard the crippled flagship, replaying the battle in his mind. Every tactic, every decision. None had been enough. But one question haunted him most. What else are the humans hiding? On Earth, deep beneath the surface in a hidden command center, Admiral Lorna Braddock stood before a massive display. The screen showed a galaxy-wide map with dozens of flight sectors. Each marker represented an incident: a probe destroyed, an ambush repelled, a fleet obliterated. Humanity's newfound strength had been tested repeatedly, and each time they had prevailed. But Braddock's gaze wasn't on the victories. It was on the empty space beyond the marked sectors. The unknown. Captain Elias's face appeared on a smaller screen beside her. "Admiral, the Scythar are regrouping. Our probes indicate they're amassing forces in the Zentor Nebula." Braddock nodded. "Expected. They'll try to rally their allies. The question is, how long before someone else takes a shot at us?" Elias leaned forward, his expression calm but resolute. "Let them come. The Resolute will handle it." Braddock allowed a faint smile. "Your confidence is noted, Captain, but the Resolute is just the beginning." Elias raised an eyebrow. "The beginning." Braddock stepped aside, revealing a secondary display. The screen lit up, showing a massive darkened hangar filled with ships far larger than the Resolute. Their sleek designs pulsed faintly with energy, and their hulls bore no visible weapons, only smooth, featureless surfaces that seemed to drink in the light. "These are the Eclipses," Braddock said. "The next generation of Terran ships." The Resolute was a prototype. "These are the final product." Elias's eyes widened slightly. "How many?" "Enough," Braddock said simply. "The galaxy thinks the Resolute is our trump card. They have no idea what's waiting for them." Far from Earth, the Scythar's allies were beginning to show their true colors. On the planet Corinne, the Council of the rival species debated their position. The Rival were renowned for their advanced technology and their pragmatic approach to alliances. "The humans are dangerous," one counselor said, his voice edged with fear. "We've seen the footage. They destroyed 10,000 Sci-Fi ships with a single vessel." Another counselor shook her head. "The Sci-Fi underestimated them. If we align with humanity, we could secure an alliance that ensures our survival." The room erupted into debate, but the rival leader, a tall, silver-skinned figure named Cathar, raised a hand to silence them. The Scythar's arrogance led to their defeat, but the humans are not invincible. If we test their strength strategically, we may discover their limits. Cathar's glowing eyes narrowed. "Send a single fleet. Nothing too large, enough to provoke a response, but not enough to risk annihilation." The rival fleet arrived at the edge of human space 2 weeks later. It was smaller than the Scythar Armada, only 200 ships, but each vessel was equipped with cutting-edge stealth and cloaking technology. They moved silently, scanning for human activity. In the depths of space, the Resolute was waiting. Captain Elias stood on the bridge, watching as the rival fleet entered sensor range. "They're testing us," he said, his voice calm. "They think their stealth gives them the advantage." The tactical officer smiled faintly. "Should we let them believe that?" Elias shook his head. "No, show them the eclipse." In the dark void, a shadow began to emerge. The Eclipse, humanity's newest warship, decloaked before the rival fleet. Its sheer size dwarfed their ships, and its presence was both majestic and menacing. The rival hesitated, their formations faltering as they scanned the unknown vessel. Cathar's voice came through the comms, a mix of curiosity and caution. "We are the Revel. We come to understand humanity's intentions. Do you seek war?" Elias's voice replied, smooth and controlled. "We seek peace, but if you enter our space uninvited, you will find war." Cathar hesitated. "One ship does not frighten us. We've learned from the Scythar's mistakes." Elias's tone didn't waver. "This isn't one ship, it's humanity's warning." Before Cathar could respond, the Eclipse activated. It didn't fire weapons. Instead, a pulse of energy rippled from its hull, rendering the rival fleet's cloaking systems useless. The human ship then released a series of drones, each one targeting a rival ship's engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. Within minutes, the rival fleet was immobilized. Cathar's voice returned, shaken but composed. "You've proven your strength, but strength without diplomacy breeds endless war. What are your terms?" Elias's response was simple. "Stay out of our space. If you want peace, talk. If you want war, you know what happens." The rival leader paused before replying. "We will send emissaries. This isn't over." Elias's voice was firm. "It is, unless you make it otherwise." Back on Earth, Braddock received the report. "The Revel will negotiate," Elias said, his face on the screen. "They understand the cost of testing us." Braddock nodded. "Good, but others will come." Elias smiled faintly. "Let them. They'll find we're more than ready." Braddock looked at the display of the Eclipse fleet, her expression hardening. "The galaxy thought they could keep us in the shadows. Now, they'll learn that humanity is the shadow.